I still hear her voice even now. In the middle of the night sometimes. I wake up and it's like she's right there. "They abandoned me here," she said, and there was nothing I could say back. Name's Buckley Carson, but everyone just calls me Buck. Born and raised in Amarillo, Texas. 68 years old now. Been retired for what? 7 years? Yeah. 7. I was a firefighter for over 3 decades. Started back in '81. Most of my career was in San Marcos. Small town, but always something going on. Fires don't care how big the town is, they come just the same. I wasn't the fastest guy on the team, not the strongest either. But I showed up. Always showed up. That was my thing. You ask anyone who worked with me, they'll tell you Buck was steady, reliable. Had a wife for a while, couple years. We drifted, you know how it goes. No kids, never really settled down after that. The job kind of took that space. I still live near San Marcos. Little house outside of town. Quiet. Sometimes too quiet. Retirement's been good in some ways. Body needed the break. But the mind doesn't clock out. Not really. There are things that stay with you. Calls you can't shake. Faces. Words. And that woman. She's one of those things. San Marcos ain't the biggest place in Texas, but it's got character. College town, riverside, real hot in the summers, real quiet in the winters. People wave at each other. Gas stations still got folks who recognize your face. It's the kind of town where time don't run. It strolls. Firehouse 2 sat just off Hopkins Street. Small building, nothing fancy. 3 bays, 1 engine, a rescue truck, and a couple of bunks in the back. We were a tight crew. 6, sometimes 7 on rotation. I spent more hours with those guys than I did with anyone else in my life. Mornings always started the same. Shift change at 7 a.m. sharp. Fresh coffee brewing, someone cooking eggs, boots clunking on tile. I used to bring in kolaches from this little Czech place down the road. Nobody ever complained. We checked gear first thing. Always. Mask seals, hoses, tanks, muscle memory. You never wanted to be the guy who found out something was busted in the middle of a fire. Calls would come in at random, like fate rolling dice. You'd be halfway through a sandwich or watching some rerun on the tiny break room TV and then beep, 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 tones drop, radios buzz, and suddenly you're sprinting. Not every call was flames. Plenty of false alarms, medical assists, cat in a wall, car wrecks where the driver just needed calming down more than anything else. But every single call, you went. Didn't matter if you thought it was minor. You went. And when it was fire, that smell, you never forget it. Synthetic insulation, burning plastic, wet wood. You could taste it in your teeth. We had a saying, slow is smooth, smooth is fast. You didn't rush. You moved with purpose. That's how you stayed alive. Most days ended quiet. We'd sit outside on folding chairs as the sun dipped low, sipping bad coffee, talking about nothing. Sports, fishing, who snored loudest. Some of the younger guys would scroll their phones. I never took to those things much. I remember one rookie, Cody, barely 21, big heart. He once asked me, "Buck, how do you sleep after a bad call?" I told him, "You don't. Not at first, you just stack 'em up and hope the good ones outnumber the bad." He nodded like he understood, but I don't think he really did. Not then. You learn to live in the in-between. Between the calls, between the sirens. It's like you're always waiting for something to happen, even when it doesn't. That wears on a man. And there's something else. A firehouse, it becomes your second skin. You laugh hard in there, curse louder. You carry each other's weight, even the stuff nobody talks about. There was a whiteboard in the kitchen with running jokes and names scribbled on it. If you did something dumb, your name went up. One time I melted the handle off a nozzle because I got distracted yelling at a guy not to trip over the line. Buck's BBQ handle was on that board for 6 months. They never let me live it down. But that kind of ribbing, it means they love you. Means they trust you to be there when it counts. And when the radio crackled and the tone dropped, all the jokes stopped. You got serious. You moved as one. I gave that place 34 years. 34 years of Christmas dinners missed, birthdays forgotten, relationships that couldn't keep up, but I wouldn't take it back. Because I was needed. Because some days it mattered. Because there were people who went home, only because we didn't. And that made the routine worth it. But no amount of routine, no morning coffee, no drilled-in rhythm, prepared me for that one night. That call, that building, that woman. It was late. One of those heavy summer nights where the air don't move and even the pavement seems to sweat. July, maybe the third week. Don't remember the exact date, but I remember the heat, thick like syrup. We were on a night shift. Me, Cruz, Eddie, and this new kid, Braylon, I think. I was half dozing on the recliner in the break room, some old western playing on mute. Cruz was flipping through a fishing magazine, feet up on the table. Eddie was already asleep in the bunk room. I remember thinking how quiet it was. Too quiet. The kind of quiet that comes before something bad. Then the tones dropped. High-pitched, urgent. Dispatch cracked through the static. Structure fire, possible entrapment, 300 block of Lillian Street. San Marcos Care Home. Multiple calls reporting visible flames. We were on our feet before the last word left her mouth. Boots on, coats, hoods, masks hanging at the ready. I could feel my pulse in my neck. We rolled out in under 90 seconds. I was riding officer that night. Front seat. Braylon drove. Hands tight on the wheel, eyes wide. The headset clicked on. Eddie's voice behind me. Did she say care home? I nodded. Yeah, I said. San Marcos Care. Off Hopkins, next to that little grocery. I could hear him mutter, shit. Because we all knew. Those buildings? They're old, dry, packed with people who can't move fast. Worst kind of fire. As we turned onto Hopkins, we saw the smoke before we saw the flames. A thick black column rising into the night like it was punching a hole in the sky. When we made the corner onto Lillian, it was like stepping into hell. The whole west wing of the building was lit up, orange and furious, flames licking through windows, people outside in robes crying, coughing, some in wheelchairs, some barefoot. One of the nurses, young woman, maybe early 20s, ran up to my window as we stopped. Her face was streaked with soot. She was screaming, but I couldn't hear her until I cracked the door. We got people inside, she yelled. East hallway, rooms 12 through 18. Nobody got to them yet. I didn't even have time to ask how many. I turned to the crew. Eddie, Cruz, pull a line and protect that hallway. Braylon, you're with me. We go in. He nodded. His eyes were huge, but he didn't flinch. We masked up and moved. Entering that building was like walking into a nightmare. The heat hit first. Like a wall. Even through our gear, it burned. Smoke curled low like it had weight. Alarms were shrieking. Sprinklers hadn't gone off, probably never worked right to begin with. Visibility was almost nothing. Just shapes in the dark. Furniture half melted. Walls hissing and crackling. We followed the right corridor toward rooms 12 through 18. It was bad. I could hear people, moaning, calling. One woman was beating on a door from the inside, but the knob had melted shut. We broke it down. Braylon helped her up. I pulled her out. Her legs were like jelly. We kept moving. Room 14. Room 15. Smoke was thickening. I was on the verge of calling a retreat when I saw a shape, still, sitting upright, in the corner of room 17. I moved fast. I shouted, "Ma'am, fire department, we're getting you out." She didn't move, didn't even look scared, just calm, too calm. I knelt down, checked her breathing. She was alive, eyes open. That's when she looked straight at me and said it. They abandoned me here. Not yelling, not crying, just saying it, like she was talking about the weather. I froze. Something about the way she said it. like it had already happened, like she wasn't surprised. I wanted to tell her she was wrong, that we were here now, that someone came back. But my throat was dry. Nothing came out. Braylon tapped my shoulder. "We gotta go, Buck. Now." I grabbed her arms. She was so light, like lifting bed sheets. We hauled her out, coughing through the dark. The ceiling tiles were dropping now, flames moving fast. We made it to the hallway just as Cruz and Eddie laid down a suppression line. They cleared a path. We got her out, collapsed on the lawn. Me, Braylon, the woman. All of us soaked in sweat, soot, adrenaline. She just looked up at the sky. Didn't say anything else. I remember kneeling there listening to the crackle behind us, thinking, how many more said those words before we got there? How many never got to say anything at all? We pulled up on Lillian Street just before midnight. I remember because the clock on the dash read 11:47, and I thought, damn, this night's just getting started. But I had no idea just how long that night would feel. The second the rig came around the corner, it hit us. This wasn't going to be just another call. Flames were already through the roof on the west side. You could see them dancing in the windows like ghosts in orange suits. The glow was unnatural, bright like a welder's arc, but wild, alive. Smoke poured out of the building in thick, angry waves, curling into the sky like it had somewhere to be. It wasn't gray. It was black, that greasy kind of smoke that sticks to your skin, your lungs, your soul. When you see black smoke like that, you know something inside's dying. Furniture, wiring, people. There were bodies out front, but not the kind you think. Old folks, dozens of them. Some were sitting on the grass in wheelchairs. Others standing in pajamas, barefoot, coughing into towels. One man was just staring at the flames like he was watching TV. And then, screaming. A nurse, young blonde hair tied back, face slick with sweat and soot, ran right up to the engine before it even stopped moving. She was shouting something, eyes wide with panic. I couldn't hear a damn thing at first, sirens still blaring, radio going off, all of it mixing into white noise. I leaned out the window, shouted, "How many still inside?" She yelled back, "I don't know. 5? 6? They're trapped. East Hall. East Hall." Her voice cracked at the end. She looked like a kid, like someone's daughter who ended up in a nightmare. I jumped out, heart pounding. Eddie and Cruz were already dragging the hose line out. Braylon popped the gear compartment before I even said anything. Good instincts. The heat outside was unbearable. It felt like standing in front of an open oven full blast, only you couldn't step back. Sweat was pouring down my back before we even masked up. But the chaos? That's what stays with me. You train for structure fires. You drill on entry, hose management, victim extraction. But you don't train for the sound of 70-year-olds screaming for help while the walls collapse behind them. I saw an old woman sitting in the grass, her nightgown burned halfway up her back. She wasn't crying. She wasn't talking. Just rocking back and forth, whispering something to herself. I wanted to stop. Just for a second. To kneel down, put a hand on her shoulder, say, "We got you now, ma'am." But I couldn't. Because more were still inside. And the clock was ticking. I grabbed Braylon and said, "Search and rescue East Wing. We go in together. No splitting." His face was pale, but he nodded. Didn't even hesitate. There's a kind of fear that turns your legs to stone, and another kind that sharpens you. Braylon had the second kind that night. We masked up, checked our lines, and went. But even outside, just being near that building, you could feel it. The pressure. The panic. It was in the air, thick as the smoke. People were shouting from every direction. A man in a bathrobe grabbed Cruz's arm and yelled, "My wife's still in there. Room 18. Please, please find her." Cruz just looked him in the eye and said, "We will." And he meant it. Meanwhile, more engines were arriving, mutual aid from the next district over. Lights flashing everywhere, but it all felt slow, like we were trying to sprint underwater. There were no hydrants on that stretch of Lillian. We had to hook up to a line over on Walnut and run a long hose down the street. That cost us minutes we didn't have. Command was trying to set up a triage point, but we were stretched thin. The paramedics were overwhelmed. One guy, Eric, I think, was trying to treat 3 patients at once with smoke inhalation. People were passing out, falling over, sobbing. It was chaos. And all the while, the fire kept growing. I looked up at one point and saw a section of roof cave in on the west side, just folded like cardboard. The sound it made was like thunder, but wrong. Heavy. Final. Someone screamed. We turned and saw a nurse drop to her knees in the parking lot, clutching her face. And I'll tell you something. There's a helplessness that comes with being just one more set of hands in a sea of suffering. You can't save everyone, but in that moment, you want to. You want to be 100 people. You want your arms to stretch and grab every last one of them. But all you can do is move forward, mask up, go in, and hope to God you come back out. That night, on that lawn, in front of that burning care home, everything felt slower, heavier, like time bent sideways. And as we stood at that door, Braylon and I, ready to enter, I remember thinking, this place smells like death already, and we hadn't even crossed the threshold. I don't know how long we'd been inside at that point. Time gets slippery in a fire. Could have been 5 minutes, could have been 15. But I remember the smoke was thicker now, heavy as wool. We were in deep. The hallway on the east side was barely standing. Tiles on the floor were curling up from the heat. Walls were bubbling. The paint itself was blistering like the building was trying to shed its skin. Braylon was behind me, doing a sweep. We moved low. Shoulder to wall, methodical, hand to door, shout the room number. Fire department, call out if you can hear us. Room 12, empty. Room 13, occupied. But the bed was vacant, probably already evacuated. Then we hit room 17. Door was shut, not locked, just swollen from the heat. I forced it open with my shoulder. It gave way with a crack that echoed through the smoke like a gunshot. What I saw next, that's the picture that never left. There she was, sitting upright in a chair in the corner, back straight, hands folded neatly in her lap, like she was waiting for a bus not burning alive. The smoke was so thick in there I couldn't see her face at first, just the outline of her body, backlit by flickering flame outside the window. I called out, "Ma'am, fire department, we're here to get you out." She didn't move, didn't flinch, didn't react. Braylon came up behind me, flashlight cutting through the smoke. The beam caught her eyes, and that's when I saw it. She wasn't scared, she wasn't panicking, she just looked done, like someone who'd already made peace with the idea that no one was coming. I stepped in and got low, tried to speak again, louder this time. "Ma'am, we're gonna get you out now, okay? Can you stand up?" She looked at me, slowly, and then she said it. "They abandoned me here." Plain as day, not a scream, not a whisper, just a statement, soft, final. I remember blinking, like maybe I didn't hear it right, but I did. They abandoned me here. I froze. I didn't know what to say, because deep down I knew she wasn't just talking about the fire. Something in her voice, it cut through the gear, through the smoke, through the years of training. This wasn't just a rescue. This was a woman who'd been left behind long before tonight. By family, maybe. By the system. By life. And now, this. Left in a burning room, silent, forgotten. It broke something in me. I dropped to one knee, face mask fogging up. I reached out, took her hand. It was cold. Not from temperature, but from resignation. I said, "No one's abandoning you tonight, not on my watch." Braylon stepped in, nodding at me. "We gotta move, Buck. Ceiling's starting to go." I nodded, still holding her hand. "I'm gonna carry you now, okay?" She didn't answer. Just gave the faintest of nods, like permission. I slipped my arms under her, and as I lifted her, I felt how small she was. Fragile. like holding paper wrapped in skin. She weighed almost nothing, but the weight of her words, God, it was heavy. We turned back into the hallway. The heat was worse now. One of the light fixtures above us popped. Glass rained down like tiny sparks. Cruz's voice came through the radio. East Wing, move fast, collapse is imminent. We picked up speed. Every step felt like a mile. My boots stuck to the floor with every lift, and I had to keep shifting her weight to keep her breathing above the smoke line. Braylon stayed on point, clearing debris with his gloved hands, kicking aside what he could. The woman didn't speak again. She just rested her head gently against my chest, like she'd finally allowed herself to relax, to let go. That was the moment that hit me the hardest. Not the flames, not the fear, but the trust. She didn't know my name, didn't know where I came from, but in that moment, I was somebody. Somebody who showed up. Somebody who didn't leave. We reached the exit just as part of the ceiling gave way behind us. The roar was deafening. Braylon grabbed the door handle. It was scorching. He wrapped it in his jacket, shoved it open, and a wave of cooler air hit us like a slap. We stumbled out onto the grass, gasping, coughing. Eddie ran over with a medic, and they took her from my arms. She was alive, breathing, but her eyes stayed on me, even as they loaded her onto a stretcher. And I swear, there was something in them that said thank you. But it's too late. That stuck with me. Still does. Because you can pull someone from a fire, but you can't always pull them from what life's already done to them. When I handed her off to the medics, my legs almost buckled. I hadn't even realized how much adrenaline had been holding me up. But I didn't sit down, didn't take my mask off, didn't look away from the building, because I knew there were still more inside. I turned to Braylon. His mask was half off, face drenched in sweat. We locked eyes. No words needed. We were going back in. That's the thing nobody tells you. The body wants to stop. After one rescue, your muscles scream, your chest heaves, your mind says, you've done enough. But the job doesn't care. People don't stop needing you just because you're tired. We turned around and ran back toward the door. Cruz was at the entrance, holding a line steady with Eddie. He shouted, "Room 18 still unaccounted for." That hit like a bolt, because I remembered the man outside, the one who grabbed Cruz's arm and said his wife was in room 18. She was still in there. We moved. The building was collapsing in places now, hallway ceiling sagging, embers raining from the fixtures. Heat was no longer a presence. It was a force, a pressure on the chest, a weight on the head. It felt like the air itself wanted to crush us. Visibility had dropped to inches. Even the flashlight beams were useless. It was like crawling through ink. We got to room 18 and the door was shut, jammed from the frame warping. I hit it once, twice, nothing. Braylon rammed it with his shoulder, let out a grunt. Door cracked, but didn't open. Then I saw the crowbar still clipped to his turnout gear. I grabbed it, jammed it in, and pried. The wood split down the side, just enough to squeeze through. Inside the room was a furnace, one bed. One woman sitting upright like she'd tried to get up but couldn't finish the motion. She was conscious, barely, eyes fluttering. Braylon rushed to her side. "Ma'am, we're here, we got you." But her breathing was shallow, real shallow. We had no time. I knelt, pulled her toward me, and that's when I heard it. A crack. Loud. Above us. I looked up and saw the ceiling beam bending. Braylon saw it too. We both knew what it meant. We had seconds. I yelled, "Go, move!" We scrambled back into the hallway. Braylon cleared a path while I carried her. Then the beam came down, hard. It hit just behind us, shook the floor, dust, debris, flame. It sealed off the way we came. I turned to Braylon. "We go left, through the supply corridor." He hesitated. That path wasn't clear earlier, but we had no choice. We moved. That corridor was narrow, filled with carts and broken shelves. I pushed through, shielding her with my body, feeling debris hit my back and helmet. Braylon tripped once, caught himself, kept going. At one point, I slipped on melted linoleum. My knee slammed the ground, hard, felt something twist, didn't stop. We finally saw a flicker of light at the far end, an exit door, but it was blocked. A folding table had collapsed in front of it, and behind it, smoke, rising fast. I set the woman down gently and looked at Braylon. We clear it. Now. We both went at it, lifting, pulling, kicking. Got just enough space to squeeze through. I grabbed her again, arms like rubber now, and pushed through that door like it was the last thing on earth. And then, air, cooler air, the outside. Medics rushed over, took her from my arms. I collapsed on the grass next to Braylon. Couldn't breathe, couldn't speak. We just laid there for a second, staring up at the night sky, stars peeking through the smoke like shy witnesses. Someone handed me a water bottle. I took one sip, coughed half of it back up. Cruz knelt next to us. "You two are insane." I nodded. "Yeah," I said, barely a whisper, "but we got her." Braylon just looked over at me, smiled through the soot, didn't need to say anything. We saved two that night. That woman from room 17, and the man's wife from room 18. And I won't lie, there were more we didn't. They found two residents the next morning after the fire was fully out. Room 21, room 22, too late, room 20. And that's the truth of it. Some runs you win, but not all. Even when you give everything, the fire takes what it wants. But I keep thinking back to that moment in room 17. Her voice, the way she looked at me. They abandoned me here. And how close she was to being right. You'd think after that night, things would start to fade. That time would come in, like a tide, and wash the worst of it away. But it doesn't. Not all of it. Some memories, they settle in, like smoke in your lungs. You don't feel it at first. But one day you're sitting on your porch, coffee going cold in your hand, and it creeps up. Tight in the chest. A name you can't remember, but a face you'll never forget. Her face. I never even got her name. I asked around after the fire, but the records were a mess. Half the files were burned. The other half, nobody had time to sort through. But I see her clear as day. Thin frame, short white hair, eyes like she'd seen the world get tired of her. I remember the way she looked at me when I lifted her out of that chair. Not scared, not grateful, just accepting. Like she'd already made peace with dying in that room. And when she said those words, "They abandoned me here," it was like the air left the room. Not just because of the fire, but because I knew she wasn't wrong. You can feel when something goes deeper than the moment. Her words weren't just about that night. They were about years. Years of being passed over. Maybe by her kids. Maybe by a system that doesn't care if your room has working sprinklers or if the night staff actually knows your name. Maybe just by life itself. That line, "They abandoned me here," it plays in my head like a loop. Sometimes when I'm shaving, or sitting at a red light, or walking past the mirror on my way to bed, I'll hear it. Her voice, flat, honest, and somehow heavier than anything I ever carried out of a fire. I tried to talk about it. Once, 6 months after I retired, met a guy at a diner, retired captain from over in Waco. We were swapping stories like old firefighters do, laughing, complaining about back pain and how kids these days don't know how to pack a hose. And then he asked me, "What's the one that stuck with you?" And I froze. I could have told him about the warehouse fire in '98, or the rollover crash with the kid pinned under the dash, or even the time we pulled 3 out of a flooded trailer during the big storm in '07. But none of that came out. I just sat there, fork in my hand, pancakes going cold, and I said, "San Marcos Care Home." That was all. He nodded like he understood, didn't push, didn't ask for details. And I was grateful for that, because I don't know if I could have said more. Not without cracking a little. It's not the fire itself that lingers, not the heat, not the noise. It's the silence after, the way your mind replays one moment again and again, like it's trying to find some other way it could have gone. Maybe if we'd gotten the call sooner, maybe if the sprinklers had worked, maybe if I'd just gotten to room 17 5 minutes earlier. But she was alive. We got her out. And still, it didn't feel like a win. I don't know what happened to her after that. She was taken to the hospital for smoke inhalation, I heard. Stable condition. That's all they told us. I called once. Asked to check on her. Nurse told me she'd been transferred to another facility. Didn't say where. Didn't have a forwarding name. Just gone. Like she vanished. And that somehow felt worse than if she hadn't made it. Because she deserved more. She deserved someone showing up the next day. And the day after that. Not just in a fire. Not just when the building's collapsing. She deserved someone who remembered her name. Who knew what music she liked. Who brought her coffee and asked how she was sleeping. Instead, all she got was me. For 7 minutes. In smoke and panic. And it kills me that those might have been the first minutes in a long time she felt seen. I've run into people since then who say things like, "You must feel proud of that night," or, "You saved her. That has to count for something." And yeah, maybe it does. But pride's not what comes up when I think about her. What comes up is a quiet ache. A kind of grief I can't explain. Not for what I did, but for what she never got. And I think about others like her. Still out there, still waiting, in rooms just like that one. Folding their hands, looking at the door, hoping someone walks through. I've had a lot of time to sit with things since I hung up my helmet. Mornings come slow now. I make my coffee, feed the dog, read the same news I read yesterday, and sometimes I think about that hallway, that room, that woman. It's funny, isn't it? You spend decades training to save people from fire, but nobody trains you for what happens after. When the uniform's in a closet, when the radio's silent, when the world moves on and you're left alone with memory. I think about her more than I want to admit. Not just because of what she said, but because of what it made me realize. We always told ourselves we were fighting the flames, but truth is we were fighting time. Fighting the slow, quiet ways people slip through the cracks. One missed call, one forgotten birthday, one long-term care home that used to be a motel with bad wiring and no funding. That's how it starts. That woman in room 17, she didn't just get abandoned during the fire. She'd been abandoned in all the little ways long before that. And it makes me wonder, how many of us are already sitting in our own room 17? We just don't know it yet. Aging's a strange thing. You don't notice it in the mirror first. You notice it in how often the phone doesn't ring, in how long it takes someone to reply to a message, in how your mailbox becomes more full of pharmacy ads than birthday cards. I used to get calls from the station every now and then. "Hey Buck, you coming to the barbecue? Got a rookie asking about that trailer fire you pulled 4 from, come tell the story." Now it's just silence. And you try not to take it personal. They've got jobs, lives, kids. The world keeps spinning. But there's this ache, this slow ache that builds in the quiet. Not physical, not like the bad knee or the stiff back. This one's deeper. It's the ache of being remembered only by the stories you told, not by the people who lived them with you. And when she said it, "They abandoned me here," it hit something in me I didn't know was waiting to be hit. Because I've felt it too. Not in flames, not trapped in a room, but in long nights where I couldn't sleep and didn't know who I'd call if something went wrong. In birthdays where the only voice was the one on the radio playing classic country. In the silence after a good dream ends. You spend your whole life trying to be useful. To be the guy people count on. To show up when others run away. But when it's all over, who shows up for you? That's the question that keeps me up sometimes. And it's not just me. I've got buddies, retired cops, paramedics, even military guys who say the same thing. You serve, you give, you sacrifice holidays, marriages, health, and when the uniform comes off, you fade. It's like being erased one day at a time. We don't talk about it enough, how lonely it gets, how fast. And maybe that's why her words cut so deep. Because they weren't just about her. They were about all of us. Everyone who's ever sat in a room and wondered if they still mattered. If anyone would notice if they didn't wake up tomorrow. If their name meant anything outside of a paycheck, a badge, a call sign. I used to think the fire was the enemy. Now I know it's time, neglect, forgetfulness. The slow burn that eats people from the inside out and doesn't leave scorch marks anyone can see. There's something else too. When you're young, they tell you to be brave, to charge in, to act fast. But they never teach you how to carry the ones you couldn't save, how to live with their faces, how to answer a voice in your head that says, you should have done more. And as you get older, you start to realize sometimes being brave means sitting with that pain, not fixing it, just facing it. I've got a picture in my mind burned in like a scar of her eyes, not wide with fear, not even asking for help, just tired, tired of being forgotten, tired of being shuffled around like paperwork no one wants to file. And every time I remember her, I feel this mix of guilt and something else, a kind of duty, not to her exactly, but to others like her, to not look away, to not forget. That's why I'm telling this, not because I want sympathy, not because I want to be called a hero, but because maybe someone watching this knows what I'm talking about. Maybe they've got a parent, an aunt, a neighbor sitting alone in a quiet room, waiting, hoping someone walks through the door. And maybe, just maybe, they'll pick up the phone. Show up. Before it's too late. Because no one should have to say what she said. Not once. Not ever. I don't know why you're watching this. Maybe you're just curious. Maybe you've got someone in your life who used to wear a uniform like I did. Or maybe you're sitting there wondering why a grown man still loses sleep over a call from years ago. Either way, I'm glad you're here. Because the truth is, we don't talk enough about what happens after the sirens fade, about the people left behind, not just in fires but in life. If there's one thing I hope you take from this, it's to look closer. Look at the older folks in your life, the ones who don't ask for much, the ones who say I'm fine when they're anything but. Look at your parents, your grandparents, your neighbors 2 doors down. Ask yourself, when was the last time someone really saw them? Because that woman in room 17, she wasn't loud, she wasn't angry, she just sat there, waiting. And I keep thinking, how many people out there are waiting right now for someone to walk through their door? So if you're watching this and someone comes to mind, someone you haven't called in a while, do it. Doesn't have to be long, doesn't have to be deep, just enough to say, I see you, you matter. Because one day, it might be you in that chair, and you'll want someone to walk in and say, I'm here, I didn't forget you. We can't change the past, but we can damn sure change what happens next. Thanks for listening. And if you've ever lived something like this, a call you can't shake, a moment that still wakes you up at night, drop it in the comments. Share it. You're not alone. Not now. Not ever.